Today, we're going to talk about something that I think is personal to everyone. Every developer has experience. Environment hell. Being a bit dramatic, but it is a dramatic topic. You know the drill, it works on your machine, but then breaks in CI, works different in production. And today I have two super special guests. A repeat guest. Welcome back, Ron Efroni, CEO and co-founder of Flox. Welcome. Thank you for being here again.
Awesome to be here, Andrea. Thank you.
And hello for bringing me a new friend, Rob Ferguson, CTO for Microsoft for Startups, CTO of Microsoft for Startups and Global AI. Welcome, Rob.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
Hey, and you've seen this kind of problem, right? From every angle, at startups, at big enterprises.
For sure. I've built eng teams from 0 to over 100 more than once. And so I lived it as a startup CTO. And now that I help hundreds of startups, I watch it every day.
All right. Well, so we're going to talk a little bit about how containers fail to solve this, deterministic environments. But then I want to start with a big chunk of news. Ron, you just raised your Series B. Incredible. And I want to know what you're going to do with this money.
So first thing is we're going to buy a booth at GitHub Universe.
My team is going to be so happy to hear that.
Just because of this podcast, so we can definitely lock that in as a KPI.
Thank you.
I think jokes aside, we're pretty excited. There's a lot that we're looking at. I think the overarching concept that we've always been looking at is like, how can we provide a platform that allows for any developer, agent, or engineering organization to just take an environment from where it needs to be, whether it starts off in the developer environment landscape, all the way through into production, because what we truly care about is having production just work, right? And we're seeing that obviously explode now with AI. But for us, the three main things that I'm looking outside of it is how do we start bringing in much more secure environments into that ecosystem? Can we reach a situation where I'm providing engineering teams, I'm providing agents, a platform that can actually create zero known CVE ecosystems that are configurable, portable, and movable, but also at the same time, can we provide these, again, this explosion in AI is definitely driving a lot of this conversation. Can we actually create this platform that allows agents to build on top of something deterministic, but also that provides them with guardrails and the full provenance to drive like agentic runtime environments, again, back into the production universe? So for us, I think the main focus that we're going to be looking at is definitely this flywheel motion of getting wider into the industry, getting developers where they are, while also pretty much exposing functionality further to the right, further into the realms of security and agents and
So important and relevant because our organizational charts will never look the same, right? So the products that we're using also need to incorporate that. And Rob, let me bring you in here because you work with startups through Microsoft. Startups, you've been a CTO multiple times. And when startups are racing to like ship these AI products, like some of those environment problems are actually costing them time, money. What did you see breaking the most?
Well, there's an old expression, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And so what I always think about is, when you go from one developer to two developers, all of a sudden you're going to have these like little conflicts that can appear all the time. And if you're an engineering leader, the first thing that you're thinking about is, how do I make it so that everybody can work smoothly together? How do I get rid of the arguments? How do I get rid of little, mistakes that cost you time? And it's just like enough rails that you feel like you can just glide along, but not so much of, I worked with dev teams that were really buckled down, really strict policy if you ever wanted to add anything, because they were so worried about what would happen to the product if you accidentally slipped in a dependency that was wrong, and then you'd be doing versioning and all these other pieces, and having the ability to have reasonable checkpoints, go back to any point in time that you needed to, be able to work on somebody else's machine. Especially as you get into larger teams, one of the biggest things is not going to be code problems, it's going to be people problems. So you have to have tools that actually make people want to work together, and also in a way that is, not just reproducible, but portable to the environment that they're working in.
Absolutely. Ron, let's talk a little bit about the technical approach that your company is taking into solving this very problem. Because most people hear, like when they start thinking of reproducible environments, they think, okay, well, Docker. So how does Flox differ from containers, and why does that distinction matter?
So I think it's really important to kind of dive for a second deeper into Nix.
Let's do it.
Right. So you were asking about the B round. My hidden fourth aspect of the B round is I want to just genuinely see how much more we as pretty much as like the Flox team can further support Nix. So
Yes.
that's like a hidden aspect. But if we're diving more into Nix, and for folks that know Nix, that's amazing. The way that I like to look at it is Nix came 20 something years ago and said, wait 1 second. What if all of our software could have one common baseline that we just build from, right? Instead of having to assume that different package managers for different languages and different dependencies are going to be outputting different build artifacts, like instead of everything having to be explicitly fragmented, can it all just be a one common baseline? And 20 something years ago, you'd be like, even with the low level of complexity we had at that time, which was already high, you'd still call that kind of insane. Because for everything to have a common baseline, we need everything before that and that it depends on to also work in that same common baseline, right? That Nix-based ecosystem, the Nix expression framework. And here we're 20 years later, tens of thousands of monthly active contributors. I mean, I think we're now at north of 10,500. Over 20 years have actually rebuilt all of software based on this one single paradigm and one single software principle. So now when, obviously it's not all 80%, 90%, but enough of it that we've reached an inflection point where when I'm building software now, I can actually have it fully in a puristic way be based on that one common architectural path. And what that means, it means that when I'm creating software now, myself, my agents, my teams, my customers, I can actually reproduce this common fabric where we're all talking the same language. The computer, us, our agents, their computers are all talking the same language.
Yes.
And that just means that now when I'm deploying software, my agents are deploying software, I don't need to care about what operating system it's running on, what's the underlying architecture, what type of metal are we using. It just works, right? So that concept of it just works, we can suddenly take from all the way from development, all the way through to testing, to sandboxing, right? This is now becoming really important with like this agent, guardrails and where can they work and what remit do we give them, but then push it all the way through into production. And that will just work across the band. So back to your question, I think containers are awesome.
Yes.
Containers, we've been using them. They're part of where developers are at. They're part of our ecosystem. They're ingrained into Kubernetes. There's a lot of amazing things that they do. And I think that where there's a differentiation, and the thing is that it doesn't have to be a or, it can be an and. So Flox does output to a container. I think by the time this might be released, we'd also be announcing what we're calling Kubernetes uncontained. So
Ooh.
Actually be
Say more, please.
You'd actually be able to take Flox and Nix-based environments all the way into Kubernetes.
Wow.
But to your main question about the difference that I see, and again, I know I'm long-winded on this one because I did want to give that background reference. Containers are kind of like a snapshot, right? Like here's an image, let's take it. This is what we have, let's roll. What I'm saying is that with Nix and with Flox, we can have a full graph of everything we need in order to run that piece of software the exact way that we wanted to run it on the day that we created it. So we have that much deeper reproducibility, and that allows us to have much deeper portability when we go further to the right. And the other thing is that it's much smaller. It's like 90% smaller.
Wow.
It's much faster. And assuming this comes out again, after KubeCon, you're going to be able to see how you do that with that step almost at like zero.
You already touched on something that I wanted to talk about how development environments are evolving, obviously, and you're moving the project towards the direction of supporting that growth. Rob, from the startup perspective, where do you think this has to go for it to become sort of default? Like, so all developers are using it.
You know, I had a startup that I was the VP of engineering for where we used Nix. And the reality was that for us, it was incredible, except for, there was just a sort of longer build times for us to figure out. We were a very early adopter of the technology. And so, little paper cuts can absolutely slow down your team, make it harder to use. And so what I like so much about what Flox has done is it's on top of Nix and it's removed any of those feelings of paper cuts, right? Just make it actually really, really easy to use. Most of my AI engineers, they're not system devs, right? They don't actually really understand once you're getting into CUDA, once you're getting into the bare metal aspects of the machine, you know, like I've seen folks with different versions of BIOSes. I've seen folks with
I see Ron smiling.
you know, all these things that they're the most difficult traps. You're never going to figure it out. And, you know, these people are PhD experts in their field, but like that means they very narrowly studied something super intensely, and that's what they want to work on. They don't want to get pulled into other places. So you want developer dial tone. You want to know that if I drop in here, I'm safe. And, you know, for engineers, like confidence really matters. Like you need to have an environment where it's like, hey, like I know I'm not going insane here. This machine is working the way that I wanted to. When you have like an off by one error because you have an out of date driver, you'll never figure it out. You'll go completely insane. And then that's when you get into superstition. And superstition can wreck teams. Like, and so in the AI era, I think people maybe are thinking more on the solo dev side too. Well, is your old self going to remember how to do all these steps? Like, you know, are you going to be able to go back in time to when you wrote your first agent? Like, you want to be able to keep it updated. You want to be able to work on this. But like, you know, I can't remember the code I wrote last week.
Did you surprise yourself? Sometimes you look at things that you done a couple of years ago and sometimes very judgmental and you're like, oh, wait, that was me. Never mind.
Well, I always, when I look at my old code, I'm just like, and this is still in production somewhere, folks.
It's running the world as we know it. That is a fantastic point. Fantastic point. We talked a little bit about Nix, and Ron, you're in a super interesting position. Like, we have to highlight that you are the president of the NixOS Foundation. Thanks for the hard work that you do there. And of course, Flox, your company, is investing heavily into Nix and giving back. You're also building a commercial product. I'd love to, if you could say more about what it's like to build a company, but also playing such an important role on strengthening the open source.
I feel like a full-time psychologist.
I was going to say hosting a foundation, like basically settling religious debates.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, the opposite, like the fact of the matter is that I think there is an awesome open source like leader that if anyone's listening to this, highly recommend the books that this person wrote, Peter Hitchens.
Okay.
And he kind of really, the quote that stuck with me in a lot of his, like how to build open source, how to run open source, was that it's community before code. So it's people first, right? But that is necessary because at the end of the day, we're a lot of humans just trying to work together towards a common goal. And I think that's what's incredibly amazing about open source, right? That's like the one, I'm obviously being over-biased and, you know, wearing my heavy open source hat here, but I truly view it as the one ultimate way that humans from everywhere, as long as they have like internet access, can actually work together on something that we're passionate about and can just put it out there to create better things for other humans. At the end of the day, that's a lot of us working together and from the most diverse set of backgrounds in the world, right? When you look at a startup, when you look at a company, there's a lot of hiring that happens around the culture and is this person a fit? Open source has none of that to a certain extent because the whole point is it being open, right? You can be from anywhere. You can think about anything. As long as you're trying to do good and you're doing good by your community, we welcome you. And that just creates a very diverse, probably one of the more diverse sets of like interactions between different humans. And therefore, you know, I'm stoked about it, but like a lot of my role and the folks around me supporting me across the foundation and the steering committee and the governance models, it's a lot of just, you know, community. Like how do we just make sure this thing operates so that we can do good together?
Listen, this is the hard work and thank you for doing it because I wouldn't want to. But you're right, though. At the end of the day, it's about people. Software problems are people problems. And as long as we're kind to one another.
And the other thing I'll say is that my very opinionated view for anyone building an open source company, anyone looking at open source projects, is that build on top. Like, look at the market.
Yes.
Follow where the money is. And where the money is, think about how you bridge things that just don't exist in the open source that can address bring it to work, bring it into production, bring it where the problems and the money is at. And don't try to go and, let's say, like compete with the open source. Don't try and take away from it because that's the beauty of what it exists. We stand on the shoulders of giants, Right. So for Flox, it's very inherent that Nix succeeds. If they end up using Nix, amazing, because that's one more person that believes with us in the principles of it, and it's going to be building it up. Right. So I think for us, it's very much on what additional value can create on top and not on the side.
I love that. Rob, you have an incredible experience, obviously, your own startup, as a long career, as well as now being the CTO of the Microsoft for Startups program. I feel like there should be study, the startups that build on top and support open source projects. I don't know, based anecdotally purely. I don't know, maybe there has been studies and I haven't found them. What are you seeing common denominators for success, for acceleration of the startups that are part of the Microsoft for Startups program? Not sure if you can share any of that. That'd be great.
I mean, I think I can. I have this crazy perch where I get to not just talk to startups, but I also get to see what they're using a lot of times.
Fantastic.
And I have this global team that goes and helps people solve really, really gnarly problems, especially when it comes to adopting production AI, which I feel like we don't often get to hear about production AI. We hear more just about single player mode AI.
Yes.
And it is hard to do AI well at scale. I have people who are going through and they're trying to figure out, the economics nobody talks about. It's oh, hey, I was spending $5,000 a month developing this AI agent, and now that I'm trying to take it to scale, and now I have to handle fallbacks and retries and all this other stuff. And so I'm spending $50,000 a month. But now I need to compete with all of the best AI companies in the world. So I'm spending $500,000 a month building my own models, being able to work across these different pieces. And of course, they're all using open source. One of the incredible Azure insights that I was able to see is just how happy people are running open source on Azure and how much we want to be able to help them just run open source better on Azure. My big question is always hey, do you like running this stuff? And they're like, well, it's amazing that we have the data center availability, but we're running, we basically rolled our own stack. I'm like, awesome.
Okay.
That's something that I want to help people be able to do well. And then, of course, figure out the right kind of guardrails to make sure that they're successful. And then, so we're always kind of looking for the pitfalls. Microsoft does an awesome job of writing a lot of open source guardrails for folks. If you ever go and you look at the agent framework and you start looking at our AI specific guardrails, it's all open source. All the tenants are open source. Everything that is there, that is. And we want it to be portable because developers need trust. They need to know that if we're not doing our job, that they can leave. That's inherent in the agreement. And so that makes us do a better job.
Yes, I love that. We're leaning heavy into the developer choice aspect of everything we do at GitHub too. And that's one of my most favorite things that we're doing.
Yeah.
I want you to be here because the product does what you needed to do. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, we just want to be, we want to be the best version.
Exactly.
And choice makes us better. So absolutely. So I think that's the unspoken rule of AI is that people think about portability much more. If they're not able to get the AI model that they want in one place, they want to be able to switch around. And so we always have to be able to support both the best open and closed in my work, but I find them going more towards open every day.
That's amazing. Ron, I'm talking about what you're doing at GitHub because you are running native GitHub Action support. I just recently learned you're one of only 4 vendors that NVIDIA authorized to distribute their CUDA binaries. Pretty exclusive club. What do those partnerships unlock for you, especially when it comes to AI workloads?
So I think that's an amazing question. I think the way I look at things, right, we're trying to build a platform that humans and agents can just become the de facto choice, because why not, right? It's simple, it's easy, it's frictionless, and then it provides so much value in what we said before, right? Everything from reducing the size of images, speed ups and security and agentic, there's a lot of good stuff in there. And I think the way that I look at this is that the way to actually go and meet developers where they are has 2 sides.
Yes.
One is explicitly focusing and creating, again, unbiased, an open source ecosystem that focuses on the developer experience and also integrates and meets developers where they are. So if you're using tools, again, like GitHub Actions, I want to be there, right? GitHub Actions an amazing tool. I want to be able to integrate into that. I want that to be a first class kind of experience when you're using it, because I want to meet you where you are. Not only, should we meet developers where they are on the left, we need to meet developers where they are when they're at work.
Oh,
right. And when they're at work, who are they working with? They're working with Microsoft. They're working with NVIDIA. They're working with major cloud providers. It's not necessarily the choice that the developer made. It could have been made by the CTO or platform engineer.
yes.
And therefore, there's also this whole aspect of, I want to make sure that we're ingrained into the folks leading the industry, right? And those are folks exactly like Microsoft and NVIDIA and other teams that we've had the extreme honor to kind of come in and show them what we can do, show them that it matters, and them taking bets on us. So I think the NVIDIA CUDA agreement, where we're able to distribute CUDA binaries, for developers, why is it amazing? Or researchers or research teams? Because you can now create reproducible CUDA stacks that are secure, fast, zero build time. It's incredible for the DAO. For the decision maker, right, it drives that industry standardization. It's showing that we've not only spent, the A stage of the company building out an amazing product and an amazing ecosystem and supporting the Nix open source, but also validating in some of the biggest companies in the world that this works.
Rob, could you add something to that? How do those partnerships play into, especially with your experience with the startup ecosystem?
Well, it's so interesting to me because CUDA is very heavy. And so this is both relevant in both like the heavy side and the light side, right? So because on the heavy side of things, you're like, my old eng team, we made the delightful decision to try to build a colo and actually like have a bunch of GPUs in a room and try to keep everything up to date and try to get the right version of CUDA running and everything else. We quickly moved to the cloud. We tried. But like that task and being able to, like, when you're moving around really large binaries, when you're thinking about actually, setting up a cluster as you're working across the different geographies, that's a very heavy task. And as you remember, like, you want to keep these things really smooth. The fact that we're able to use the same technology to handle those kind of actions is like build super lightweight agents, right? To be able to go in and, build little edge applications. The being able to be consistent, then all of a sudden everybody can help one another. For me, developers, they want two things. They want ownership and mastery. They want to be able to say like, hey, I built this service, or, they have a lot of pride in that kind of work.
Yes.
And then they also want to feel like what they're doing is making them become more skillful. And so when you feel like a piece of technology can be permanent, like, hey, I can actually take this with me from job to job. I can do this for all of my different tasks, and I can become an expert at it. Like, that's the feeling we want as developers. We want to know that we're building upon something and that we're actually going to help our fellow developers, like, also build their careers. Like, it's such a great community of people. They're always reinforcing one another. So, that's what I really think about. Is it like, how can I bridge the gap between the systems engineer and the ML engineer? How can I bridge the gap between the JavaScript engineer? In my teams, I'm always going to try to get every single person coding. Our office manager, I had
This is
had them
amazing.
coding.
Really, I love that. I love that.
And the way that you do it is like building that community.
Yes. Amazing. Well, you've been here at GitHub Universe. I have to ask you I don't know if you got an opportunity to watch both keynotes yesterday and today. Ron, what are you excited about? What have you heard that you're like,
I think actually, it's kind of niche, but I think there's a team called the GitHub Next team.
yes, they're doing amazing work. I'm a fan.
So I don't want to, they say better than I do, so I don't want to spoil that too much, but Don and the team there are really some incredible things. And I think they're really thinking about the frontier. They're really thinking about what's the new reality that we're going to have to work with in the next 5 years, rather than how do we build from where we are today. And I think that's what I'm pretty excited about. There's amazing notes here around the future of Copilot, where things are going. And I think that's great. But for me, it's more about, the folks looking at the next 5 years, defining and taking a bet on what that thesis for that would look like. And then saying, this is how we build products for when we're there, is what got me very excited.
Thank you for sharing that. And shout out to the GitHub Next team. They're doing amazing work. What about you, Rob?
the GitHub Next team did really inspire me. They taught me something really important this year. Basically, it used to be we'd write these crazy like PRDs, these giant specifications. They're like, you know what? Why not have your like PRD just be a demo? Like go ahead, grab like GitHub Spark, throw it together, like a quick demo, get everybody on the same page. I thought that was incredible because you can just compress these things that used to just take us months and months and months. It's just like you have this aha moment when all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's what you mean? We can build that. And then like the team actually goes and then you start getting into spec kit and actually like build out like the real requirements based off of this conversation you had. And so the conversation that used to be like months of docs going back and forth is now like we can build that. And then and then you've got like you actually can start working towards the spec. And so it's no vibe coding no more. Now it's vibe engineering.
Thank you for that. I like it. Thank you both so much. This has been a delightful conversation. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Ron. Can you share what's next? I mean, you did give us a sneak peek, and hopefully, what if I publish this tomorrow? Huh? No, hopefully it'll be after QCon and we can talk a bit. You have to come back so we can talk more about these big launches that you have coming up. But as you enter this new series of funding in the next year, what are you pumped about? What's happening? What's happening at Flox?
We're hiring like crazy.
Love that.
Hopefully we're still hiring when this comes out. Reach out to me.
Yeah.
The two things that I'm excited about, I'll just talk shop on the exact examples, right? So one is this KubeCon launch where we're calling it Kubernetes Uncontained. Really pumped about that. And then I'm really actually pumped about, there's a Microsoft team flying in today to give a Flox demo.
What?
On MCP servers. So they're using Flox for MCP servers and they're going to be demoing it to a huge crowd. And I'm pretty pumped about that because that just kind of like really showcases the exact use case of where things are going and where a lot of pull is happening. But yeah, that's really quick.
That's how I got really excited. When we start seeing internal adoption of tools from startups that we're working with.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it's just...
What a full circle moment. Are you kidding me?
It's so cool. So yeah, we're throwing a party, a bunch of demos. Where it's one of the demos. We've got a ton of other awesome startups also giving demos. I love when we're able to connect these universes. The Valley is so small. I think people think when they hear Silicon Valley that like it's this giant place, but I'm like, no, we're all going to work together at some point.
I'm going to use your thing and you're going to use mine. Oh, before we go, and I have to, of course, ask you where we can reach you, but if you don't mind, for folks who are listening, I failed to ask you this at the beginning, like, what is the Microsoft for Startup program?
Yeah, so it's a great question. Please go check out startups.microsoft.com.
Perfect.
Anyone can sign up, which is part of the amazing part. I think a lot of the programs out there are really kind of try to be restrictive. We try to be as generous as we can be. If you're just getting going, we'll get you $1,000 on Azure right away. You can use those credits for GitHub Copilot if you want to, which I just think is amazing. And so like, get yourself in VS Code, get yourself into GitHub Copilot right away. And then if you are continuing to work, you decide to raise some money, then we'll keep giving you more credits. We can try to grow with you, which I think is just an incredible, like it's such an honor to be able to work with these founders and like as they're growing their business. And then we'll come back and we'll help them co-sell to enterprises. We'll go and get them on the Ignite stage where it's really a ton of fun to be able to support startups all the way from the very beginning all the way through like their first big enterprise deals.
What a treat.
Yeah.
So listen, if you're watching this, you're listening to this and you've not checked out Microsoft for Startups, please do. Please do it now. Okay, Ron, where can people find you online and places?
15 different, chat channels from Ron at Flox.dev.
Perfect.
But like we have Flox.dev as the website. I'm on all the Nix channels. If you want something in Nix, it's over there or wherever it is, LinkedIn, whatever works.
Perfect. I can attest to the fact that you answered your messages. Yes. How about you, Rob? Where can people reach out?
I think the best way is on LinkedIn.
Okay.
But definitely, come to all of our startup events. We're posting about them all the time. We're here at GitHub Universe. I hope to see you at one of them.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much. I appreciate you being here with me today. And I'm so excited for our listeners to go and dig into Flox, maybe contribute to Next, and join the Microsoft for Startup program.
Yeah, thanks so much.